At the end of 1111 AD, the Reclamation once more been in a position to continue. Both Ioannes and Alexios' armies had been replenished from their losses and would be able to march on the former Roman lands and obtain them once more for the Empire. However, the situation with the two young generals could not be more different. At this point of the Reclamation, Ioannes was confident and flushed with the victories he had obtained over the rebel settlements in the north. However, there was a difference between fighting ill-equipped rebels and facing the armies of rich Venice. Only time would tell whether this confidence was well placed. Alexios, though, remained plagued by doubts about his ability to command his men. Despite capturing both Ankara and Iconion once already, his position was no different now than it was at the beginning of the Reclamation. Surely this would be noticed by the Emperor and his cousin Ioannes. Hello everyone, I am your host Warrior Angel. Welcome back to part 7 of The Phoenix Rises, my narrative let's play of Medieval 2 Total War. Now in the last episode I spent the time retraining and recruiting more men for the upcoming expansions, and in this episode we're going to carry on going ahead and doing them. As you can see with Alexios over in Baris Castle, we've still got one more unit to retrain, but with reinforcements I've brought from Constantinople and Iconion, I now have the opportunity now to actually send the army off towards Iconion like I was planning to do. So I took the opportunity now just to try and sort out which armies were going to go and which men were going to be in which place. Obviously I wanted the most, a lot of men, but at the same time, as you can see, with the force currently stationed at Baris, I got a lot of units of the Conteste, which, while they're okay as javelins thing, I needed more frontline troops. So I first took the original thing just to try and move as many of them over to join up with the main army as possible. I was a bit worried then about what other units should I recruit. I still got the unit Scoutatoid I decided to go with in the end, and I decided I was going to leave the unit Siphonotaures behind in Baris, simply because they have very little numbers and I want the opportunity to try and retrain them before I carry on using them. So for the moment then I decided just to go ahead and have mainly my front line of spearmen with a few units left at Baris Castle to be able to keep as reinforcements. I give the AI a couple of seconds just in order to try and get my armies into position, and then I start moving him closer towards the Duke border. I am uncertain really what's going on with them at the moment, so I decided just to build a watchtower because it might come in handy. And as you can see now, a army has appeared, but led by Captain Itugwil a bit further north. This is something to keep an eye out on, and I think that might be in the large army that disappeared. But given the size of my army now, I could actually deal with that pretty easily, I reckon. The next thing for me to do then is that I'm going to use my bishops as spies of sorts. Not only will they be able to convert the populace over to the Orthodox faith, but they'll also be able to give me an idea of troop deployment in the Seljuk territory. As you can see, both Iconion and Ankara are relatively undefended, with only a small army stationed between the two. This will allow Alexios to actually deal with that larger army, and once he wipes them out, be able to pretty much attack both regions while they're unprotected. I take the opportunity then to go to Baris Castle just to start getting a little bit more troops recruited, and then I did notice something in Alexios' army. It seems that maybe he was a bit reluctant perhaps still, but he allowed Limenos to take control of the army. Now this is not something I wanted, because obviously Alexios is supposed to be in charge of the eastern expansion. So I sent Limenos back to the castle. Perhaps Limenos was actually being too domineering and making assumptions of command that he shouldn't be. So we move him back to Baris, where I'm going to start using him to recruit a new army. I have a feeling that the fact that he inspires dread will probably prove quite useful and allow me to do things, have other options such as exterminating and sacking the populace, which will allow me hopefully to deal with a bit better regards to civil unrest after capturing the regions. But at the same time it would cause problems with regards to the population, so it's something I'm going to have to keep in mind. So in order to build an army up for Limenos, I need to go through the eastern region, see what troops are currently available for me to recruit. It seems that my mounted Akote, my only available horseman in the eastern provinces, is not available for another few turns. But both Smyrna and Iconium happen to have spearmen and archers available, which will allow me to build up an army relatively quickly, or at least a beginnings of one. Once they are trained then, I can send them down to Baris, where I should hopefully be able to use the blacksmith, or leather tanner and tailor I should say, in order to reissue them with better weapons and armour, and then Limenos will be able to lead the army east end in order to support Alexios, and maybe try and attack one of the regions in the area. Back in the homelands now of my empire, I moved my Princess Theodora closer towards the Hungarian town of Basaf. I'm hoping to actually use her to marry her into the Hungarian family, to make them less likely to try and want to betray the alliance that I currently have with them, and make them attack me, since I actually share my entire northern borders with the Hungarian provinces. As well as that, then I send Nicolaus the Unorthodox, my patriarch, over towards Ragusa castle. Not only will I be able to start converting the people of the region over to the true Orthodox faith, but also be able to find out what's going on with Ragusa castle and hopefully have a better idea in terms of troop deployment and what they have currently garrisoned at the castle. I send Ioannes as well over towards Ragusa. Still going to take a number of turns, about a year to be precise. But hopefully it won't be that long and then he'll be able to lay siege to the castle, and then I'll be able to use it then as a recruitment station. It seems to be the same level as Corinth, so I'm hoping I can actually use the higher troop, facilities there, and maybe be able to build some better troops as well as horsemen rather than relying on mounted equity. Actually get some proper melee cav instead of just skirmishing cavalry. Once Ioannes has been seen to, I just take a second to check out how my fleet is doing at Athens. Thanks to the losses against the Venetian navy a few turns ago, I've slowly but surely been retraining and replenishing the navy, as well as bringing in other ships from other areas of the empire. Hopefully I'll be able to use them later on, even though I'm not really typically a fan of navies, but that's just my personal playing style. When I did try to find out if I had any more ships, I did come across this diplomat, Timotheus, who I forgot all about and has actually located outside Belgrade, which moving him towards Ragusa will allow me to give me at least an idea what to expect. It seems that there is 4 units currently stationed as well as a family member. I'm not sure, and I forgot to actually check whether or not he is a military-minded individual or someone more suitable for a governor position, as that could affect the outcome of the siege a little bit, given the number of men he's currently had stationed there compared to Ioannes' army. I feel pretty confident, even if he wasn't a military genius, that Ioannes would win the fight. I take a second then just to go through the western provinces. I haven't got much money then to actually build anything, but I did decide to build this grain exchange at Skopje. Hopefully I'll try and get a little bit more money once it's built. I did notice as well this rebel army outside Thessalonica. They seem to be actually well trained, 2 units of scoutatory as well as an enemy general. This is something to be considered in upcoming turns, and I'm going to have to try and rely though on other troops I think in the empire to try and deal with this rebel threat. Over in Gadax, I did notice I had another ship to be able to send over towards Athens. But more importantly, this unit of scoutatory, they're not doing any good there in Gadax. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually bring the fleet over to try and move them towards the eastern provinces so they can actually support Alexios' army. With everything else done then, I decided to end the turn. And Cosmas finally makes his way to a resource slot. The officer in the north actually goes past the Norwegian capital of Oslo, so I'm going to have to send him back there in the upcoming turns. During the Seljuk Empire's turn, I was quite surprised to see they actually moved the garrison away from Ankara, heading towards the Seljuk heartlands. The larger army then was heading towards Ankara. I was hoping to garrison it, because if they had garrisoned it, I might be able to actually deal with them, or at least hold them up, allow me to actually attack Iconion in the south. But it seems like that they decided they were just going to make the garrison in Ankara a bit larger and still send some of the men off away from the town, interestingly enough. I was hoping this could prove useful in the next few turns. As I start my next turn, I'm being given a new prince for Theodora to consider marrying into. Elias here seems interesting. He's got a number of good traits that would make him a good fighter, but he seems to have no actual military experience of command. Maybe he's someone who's been more used to fighting on behalf of others, but as I said before, I have plans for Theodora, so I decided to decline his offer of marriage. It seems my rating in the world has actually gone down quite a bit. I'm no longer anywhere near the top 3, which is unfortunate. But my construction report, I've got a lot of stuff being built now. Finally, quite a few grain exchanges. Hopefully that will give me a nice bit of boost to my income. I just have to see what happens. I've got a lot of spearmen now trained, but interestingly enough now, my allies, the Cuman Cainite, have now declared war on Seljuk's. This has got to be pretty good for me, because this should hopefully now force the Seljuks to spread their resources a bit thin. Although if the Kumakenai go too far south into Seljuk territory, I might have to declare war on them, at least to try and get some of the regions that I want, considering that they belonged to the Empire once upon a time. So it seems our allies, the Cumans, have finally declared war against the Turks. I must admit, they have taken their time making this decision, despite the delegation that I know the Emperor had sent several years ago asking them to aid us in this war. Whatever's made them change their mind, it can only mean a good thing for us. With them attacking from the north of the Seljuk Empire, the Empire's forces will be stretched thin trying to combat these threats. Hopefully this will mean an easier campaign for us, a chance to not repeat the mistakes of the past. Tell the men this news. Tell them that our noble allies have come to aid us against the Seljuks. If nothing else, it will improve morale as we march into Turkish lands once more. Back in the far north now, I finally managed to get Theophilus to speak with the Norwegians. I was hoping to try and get something quite suitable for me. I wanted the trade rights as well as map information. I wanted to offer an alliance in exchange, but it seems that it was just rejected. So I decided I was going to go with maybe a bit more of a straightforward offer. I just wanted trade rights and an alliance. It seemed though that they weren't willing to go for that, they just weren't interested. So I meant to try and go back and deal with this in a later turn, but I think I forgot all about this, so I might have to do it in the next episode. I'm more interested in just getting trade rights more than anything, so I will just probably use Field Office to try and secure that. With Cosmos down in the far east of the map, he's managed to trade with Silk so far, which is only getting him 7 florins per turn, but I'm a bit of a selfish bastard, I'm a greedy guy as well. I wanted to give him a bit more money. So moving him further down, it seems that the textiles he's come across has only given me 5 florins per turn, and it seems that any other sources around where I would have hoped to send him, there doesn't seem to be that much in the way of options, and it's going to take a few turns for him to arrive anyway. So instead of actually sending himself, I send him a bit more further towards the east. Sorry guys. Hoping then that I might be able to get a bit more money from other resources. Theodora continues to move towards the best south in order to try and negotiate with the Hungarians. It seems they do have a general currently stationed there, which could be a suitable husband for her to marry. The 55% chance rate of him joining the faction and rebelling, and he seems to be a relatively good commander, but I want to marry her into the family rather than actually seduce someone, so I decided just to use her to enter into negotiations with the guy instead. Moving over now to the western provinces, I've moved Ioannes closer towards his target of Ragusa. Still going to take one more turn, but hopefully in the next turn he'll be able to lay siege to the castle, assuming the Venetians don't get up to anything sneaky. I do move my cavalry then from Corinth over to try and join with Ioannes, although it's going to take a number of turns. At Corinth I did notice I have a unit of Scoutatory available. I decided I'm going to try and use him for something else apart from joining up with Ioannes. So I sent the unit over to the fleet, and I've sent the fleet then down to Kadax, where the other unit of Scoutatory is available. I'm going to use both of these units to send them over towards the east to join up with Alexios' army, as I feel he would benefit from having 2 heavily armed spearman units, compared to the Courtatory that he's currently been using for the past few episodes. With that done then, I decided just to see if there's anything worth building at Corinth. I noticed I haven't built land clearance yet. This will hopefully allow me not only to get a little bit of extra money from the castle itself, but also be able to build up the population growth. Hopefully in a few more, well, later on in the game, I should be able to actually build it up to the next stage and be able to get better troops from there then. At Dahashian, I was considering doing the same thing and trying maybe get some more troops, but unfortunately I haven't got anything else I could actually build. So I decided to skip that and head towards the Heartlands once more. At Constantinople then, my shipwrights are still being built up, although it's still going to take 4 more turns. And I was debating whether or not to build anything like a city watch, or a market, or even go for a merchant's wharf. Something I'm going to have to consider in the next term when I actually get a bit more money. I did decide though to try and build up the tax rate a bit better. It's been on low because at the time I actually had no population growth unless I did it. But now with things being built up, I can actually build it up and hopefully be able to get some more money. Over in the eastern front, I take the opportunity just to try and go through some of the other regions, see if there's anything I can really build, hopefully maybe to try and get more money or have you. But I was actually a bit of a stuck. There wasn't really anything that caught my fancy, So next thing for me to do is just have a look, see at the troop situation, see whether or not I can continue bringing more troops over to join up with Limnos' forces, where I'll be able to use them and then in the upcoming campaign once he gets a large enough army. A couple of units have been built, as you would have saw in the notification right at the beginning of this turn, and I still wanted to ensure there was enough of a garrison behind just to try and deal with any possible threats. So unfortunately though, it's still going to take a little bit of time for him to have an army be able to support Alexios, but hopefully not too long. Speaking of Alexios now, I decided to move him into Seljuk lands finally, but I put him in a midpoint since I wasn't sure really whether or not to send him towards Ankara or towards Iconion. So just in case, I decided to build a fort, so hopefully it'd be stationed there then, and it'd be up me to the Stukes and see what's going to happen next. As you can see, Iconion is still pretty much undefended at this point, with Ankara having a few more people, but any attack of theirs is going to have to rely on me sieging the settlements, which will allow them to actually bring in troops to try and support their garrisons once they attack. Finally, then, before I end my turn, I go to Kaffa, where I decided I was going to try and build up the tax rate a little bit more, get a little bit of extra money. And since I got a large amount of population growth in the settlements, I wasn't that worried, in fact, about actually losing the population. But, unfortunately, though, it seems a bit disillusioned thanks to the high tax rate. So, I'm going to have to try and sort that out. But with everything else done, I just went ahead and ended my turn. I didn't have to wait too long until it was the Seljuk Empire's turn. And as you can see, they started to move their armies around a little bit. Iconion seems to have a bit of a stronger garrison, and the larger army out of the two has actually started moving down south to actually garrison Iconion. Now, this could prove a bit difficult for me. I was hoping to actually try and engage them in open battle, where I would be able to actually deal with the threat, but it's something I'll have to deal with during the next turn phase. At the start of my next turn, I'm given an announcement that the King of Jerusalem is dead. I was actually thought it might have been down to old age or something, like a number of kings have died recently, but then I saw this next notification, that it seems that the Muslim armies have actually managed to capture the holy city of Jerusalem. Now I'm unsure at this moment which army might have done it, although I suspect that the Fatimid Caliphate down in the south. But it seems now that the Jerusalem king, or the leader of the order, was killed in battle. And this actually leaves things a bit open to me, since one of the areas I have to capture to obtain victory is actually Jerusalem. So the Fatimid Caliphate are now actually holding the Jerusalem. Since I was planning to go to war with them anyway, this could work out pretty well for me. I'm just going to have to see what happens. Going through the other announcements and notifications, it seems that a couple of my characters have got a few traits. For example, Maximos over here near Trebizond has now got a couple of new traits. In fact, now he's gaining over 200 florins per turn from the silver. That's pretty good. Nicephorus, my governor over Adrianople, has now become an architect, which has given me cheaper buildings as well as improved squalor in the settlements. But unfortunately, there's not really much I can do there for the most part. Finally then, it seems that Heraklinos over in the west has managed to go up in rank, increasing his hit points as well as a couple of other things, which is pretty good. I also got quite a few new troops recruited, including the Dromo at Corinth, as well as a number of Toxotai and Cortotoi units. It's going to be pretty good for me in terms of my armies being built up. I should hopefully then allow Limnos to actually go to war a bit quicker. I finally moved that unit scouter to a unit from Kadax, and it's going to arrive, both units I should say, will be arriving in the eastern provinces near Baris in the next turn. This will hopefully allow me to actually have a good centre for Alexios' army. In the meantime though, back in the western provinces, I continued trying to move my troops into position, although I had this interesting situation I was having regarding the ballista I had currently available at Arta. I thought that having the ballista available might actually prove useful for the siege of Ragusa, but given the fact that putting that in, it's going to increase the amount of time it's going to take both the cavalry as well as the ballista to get to Ragusa over a large number of turns, in which by that point the Ioannes could actually lay siege to the castle itself. I decided I was going to change that in a bit. But heading over to this situation then, I had the interesting thing, I had to decide whether or not to go through the castle itself and try and attack them, or maybe to try and drive off this reinforcing army, no matter how small it was, and hopefully allow me to deal with Ragusa without any interruptions. I managed to drive the army off slightly, but I have no more movement points. I can't actually move any further. And I do take the opportunity though just to see what units are available. They do have urban spear militia now, as well as normal spearmen and some crossbows. Now these urban spear militia don't look too bad. They're pretty good at defense. Although if I can attack them out in the field, they actually suffer from less morale, which will be pretty good for me. But they do seem quite heavily armed and trained. Heading towards Ragusa, I can actually see that one of the units is actually the urban spear militia. This could make things interesting as well, because they're going to have better morale stationed in the castle. So, something to keep in mind. I do send Timotheus over to try and find out what's going on with the Venetians, whether or not there's any other units and armies nearby. It seems there's at least 2 armies within range of Ragusa, which, if I don't get there in time, I might have to try and deal with them separately in the field, rather than allow them to reinforce Ragusa. With everything else done now on the western provinces, I go over now to the east to decide what to do with regards to Alexios' army. Do I go forward towards Iconion or towards Ankara? I take the opportunity with the spies, well, I say spies, I mean bishops there, to see if I can have a rough idea. It seems that there is a number of spear militia in Ankara, otherwise in Iconion they do happen to have access to some spear militia as well as some archers and some horsemen. So what I decided I was going to do, I was going to send the whole army towards Iconion to lay siege. Although I don't plan to actually siege the settlement, I'm hoping to allow them to try and come out and attack me directly. Yeah, I hope that's the case anyway. If not, I will be forced to try and siege the town. But I'm hoping to try and deal with it as a field battle rather than actually as a siege battle with me trying to attack them. With that all done then, I take the troops I've been building up to join up in Baris, where I'm hoping to be able to send off Limenos in the near future. As you can see now, I've got a number of spearmen available, although I still got a large number of Toxotate and a Contestate in order to be able to use. So in order to try and build up the number of spearmen I have available, I decided to just go for the other regions and see what I can do. With Dardalia, I built up another unit of mounted Acritae, so I have at least some horsemen. I should hopefully be able to deal with any retreating enemies, as well as be able to kill off a couple with their javelins. While the rest of the force then, I decided to send off, with the exception of 1 or 2 units, mainly the ranged units, since I'm more comfortable with using the melee troops, over towards Ankara. I'm hoping to be able to either use them as a reinforcing army for Alexios, or maybe to lay siege to Ankara themselves. So hopefully be able to get some more regions quickly that way, rather than try and do them separately. That bastard Alexios ordered me to spend the past year in Baris, being forced to wait like a dog for months until I'm given permission to bring my army out to help him take all the glory. The son of a cur. I regret even petitioning him now to be adopted by him into the family. Given all the stories I've heard, how he was the scourge of the East, the Seljuk slayer, I expected more from the man. Not this fool who hesitates at every order, who isn't fit for command. He hasn't even spoken of treating the Turks well, and not to be exterminated like the insects they are. The cowards. The captains tell me it is because of the losses he suffered against the Seljuk army raiding our lands a few years ago. Stupid fool. He doesn't understand that the soldiers are there to carry the mighty on their shoulders. That soldiers die is simply a fact of life. Better some peasant die, or even 1,000 die, instead of a nobleman like myself. So let him fight while I wait for my opportunity for glory. Hopefully he will fall, and I will be declared the general of the East instead. Then things will be different. Then the Seljuks will suffer for what they did to my father. I believe that Limenos is going to have to be a bit careful what he writes in his memoirs, assuming that he's not been spied upon by Alexios. I'm sure at this point. We'll have to see how things develop. Over in Kafanen, I decided I was going to have to try and deal with the public order. I did go in the end of making a logging camp, although in hindsight I should have really gone for the town watch, as this not only would have increased my public order problems, but also allowed me to recruit troops in the area. I just checked out then the diplomatic information. I seem to have missed out at the beginning of the term, but there doesn't seem to be anything worth noticing. And Timotheus has been blocked by an enemy force, which I was expected since I was trying to use him to scout out the enemy situation. Going back to Adriopol now, I decided to build a leather tanner and tailor, because I'm going to use Adriopol not only as a secondary recruitment zone in case things go bad for the Empire, as it's the nearest castle, should say, to Constantinople, but also because I want to finally try and deal with these rebels armies that seem to sprung up in the region. For example, there's this one right next to Adrianople, as well as that one with the scouter toy outside Thessalonica. Both targets of opportunity, as well as in other areas of the empire, such as near Smyrna and the eastern provinces. Dealing now with these reinforcements, I've got the situation, it's going to take a large number of turns for the reinforcements, including the cavalry, to try and get into position to help out with Ioannes. So I decided I was going to send the ballista off separately to the cavalry, hopefully then they should arrive in their own time. With everything else as far as I knew done, I decided to go ahead and end the turn. Cosmos is yet again blocked by a enemy town or another town, which is always annoying. He seems to be really trying to make a lot of personal wealth. Whereas Theodora goes and speaks with the Hungarians, but it seems that there isn't actually anything there. It seems that maybe all their heirs have been married off. I'm not sure at this point. But it means I might have to try and use her for another faction, or maybe just marry a suitable prince once they become available. I did decide to see if I can get military access, because it might come in handy, but obviously they decided not to go for it. So, with everything else done, I decided to let the end-turn phase carry on. During the Seljuk Empire's turn, this merchant or diplomat running around reminded me very much of the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland for some weird reason. You know, I'm late, I can't believe I'm late. But anyway, go back to more serious matters now. It seems that the Seljuks have managed to bring up a force to try and deal with Alexios' siege outside Iconion. I'll have to try and deal with this now in the next turn. At the start of my next turn, I just go through the notifications as always. It seems like Cosmos, as we saw in the last turn, actually got blocked yet again on his way to try and find some resources. He seems determined to try and sell off his own goods and make his own personal wealth, pretty much at any opportunity. It seems on the balance of power that I'm ranked 3rd in terms of military and 7th in terms of population, but actually quite bad in every other place. Going to the faction announcements, Zacchios Komnenos, he is Ioannes' younger brother. He's now finally came of age. And even though he's only 14, the same age as Ioannes was, you may remember, he seems he's followed his brother's path in becoming a military general. Not only is he militarily minded, but he's also got a couple of good traits, such as conscientious trainer. And he's quite young, he's still at the same level of command though. I reckon he would make a good general for the Eastern expansion to replace Alexios, given the fact that Alexios is still feeling the loss of his men and that perhaps he's starting to have some doubts. Maybe leading the expansion maybe not be the thing he might want. So it's definitely something to consider. But for the moment though, I decided to keep Ioannes. Oh Christ, I'm getting all these names mixed up now. I keep Zacchios at Constantinople. I'm hoping to try and build him up a small little force, maybe to support him and be his bodyguard, while he goes off to try and join up with Alexios' army. In the meantime, now back at the western provinces, Ioannes managed to scare off that smaller army and drive it towards Ragusa, increasing the garrison unfortunately, but these things happen. With no other option though, I decided to lay siege to Ragusa itself, building up siege towers, battering rams and ladders to allow me to get my troops into position as quickly as possible. This will all take just one turn to do, which will give me time now for my cavalry to get into position. Despite the fact they are only mounted, archers and that, it should hopefully be quite useful. I had a look at the mercenaries to see if there was anything I can recruit that might be useful, but the only one available at the moment are these Slav mercenaries. Not the most ideal troops, so I decided to forego actually hiring any mercenaries for the moment. With Ioannes is now laying siege to Ragusa Castle, I go back to Adrianople, where I'm going to send Nicephorus and the troops I currently have been recruited to try and deal with these rebels. Now, I originally just thought I would automatically resolve the battle. I thought I had a good chance of winning, but it seems that it was a close defeat. Even though Nicephorus wasn't killed, he was severely injured, which has now reduced his hit points as well as his movement points. And it means I'm going to have to try and retrain some of the men, which is going to take a little while to do. But hopefully in the next couple of turns I will be able to actually get more men and be able to deal with these units. It seems they only had 2 units as well, Toxote as well as some Scouter Toy swordsmen. which are going to be an interesting challenge, but hopefully with the number of troops I get in the next turn, I should hopefully be able to deal with them. With the western province sorted out now, I take the camera over to the east. I was originally going to send Alexios over, but I changed my mind very quickly, and instead sent Limnos over to try and deal with the situation over in the east with Alexios. Now, I did try then to lift the siege at Iconion and try and attack these reinforcing armies. Now, I was hoping though to try and go for the smaller one, which Limnos was fighting, so I could actually get him as a reinforcement, but I couldn't do it. Instead though, it seems that I'm not going to have that much of a challenge. There is some Armenian cavalry which are quite difficult and tough in battle, but the rest of the army seems to consist mainly of spear militia and Turkish ground troops, with only 1 or 2 units of mounted horse archers. This is something I reckon Alexios will be able to deal with, but we're going to fight this battle out in the next episode of The Phoenix Rises. With news reaching the ears of everyone of the Roman armies marching into foreign lands to reclaim them once more, the level of national pride felt by both commoner and noblemen alike burned more bright than ever before. The replenished movement grew strong, helped by messengers sent across the empire to spread the news and the developments of the grand expansion. The Emperor Alexios Komnenos was glad of his decision to follow the wishes of his people and his eldest son Ioannes to allow the expansion to take place. The war effort focused his people, although news had reached him of rebels cropping up in numerous areas of the empire who were against the expansion. They would be dealt with, but despite the setback the people were happy. Perhaps more importantly to him, he was proud of his son's accomplishments in securing more lands for the empire, and despite the rumours going through court regarding Alexios, he felt confident that Alexios would do well under Alexios' command and become worthy of the name Komnenos.